Welcome back to Lake Hudson Recreation Area in Hudson, Michigan and the Dark Sky Preserve. As I started to explain before, when I started crafting these historical pieces, I make an entire historical collection of many different famous pieces throughout the centuries. And this was a very key piece in the development of the Aeolian Harp, obviously, because it's the first one to be ever made and documented as that. Kircher called it an automated harmonic device. He didn't actually even call it an Aeolian harp. Aeolian comes from the Greek god of the winds, Aeolus. Aeolus was the keeper of the winds, and when Zeus would command Aeolus to let his winds out, one of the four winds would come out and they would play their songs across the strings. Now, the finish I use in this is an ancient finish because I want it to be period authentic in the finish. They didn't have such things as high gloss marine varnish in 1650 or modern urethanes or anything. So I did research and I came up with this ancient mixture from Scandinavia. The Swedes have used it for 1,000 years. And what it is it's a mixture of pine tar, naturally rendered pine tar, and flax oil, which everybody would know as linseed oil, and turpentine, which is pine resins as a carrier so it sinks into the wood. There are documented outdoor structures in Sweden that have withstood the Swedish elements for 600 years using this finish. It isn't gloss, but what happens is that it actually physically sinks into the wood and it becomes part of the wood. Now, back onto the harp, what Kircher had in his drawings and sketches is he had this box. What this box is designed to do, you can see this narrow slot here. And the doors catch the wind, they grab the wind, and they push the wind down over the strings. Now, again, throughout the centuries, there have been open-strung instruments, but the great vast majority of them had the strings contained in a narrow slot. What that does is it flattens out the wind because you need laminar flow. That's one reason why in this light breeze that the harp was singing so well, is because it's got nice straight flat flow. You can see the lake and how beautiful and flat that is. There's no turbulence for the wind. And what it needs is that nice straight flat sheet flow, such as from a lake. It comes over the strings, and then you hear several different sounds. As Kircher said, many sounds emanate from the same time. You get the vibration of the strings. You actually get an Aeolian frequency from the wind as the wind twists around the strings. Then you get the sympathetic vibrations in the sound box, which amplify the sound. This is the primary purpose of the box, is to amplify the sound. Now, when Kircher constructed this, he put a metal rod. I forged this rod. I forged everything to try and make it as authentic as possible. One thing this rod allows it to do is it allows it to be slid in and out. So, depending on the velocity of the wind, you can actually control how well or the different kinds of sounds that this harp makes. When it sits back, it doesn't have the direct influence, so in a high wind, it'd be better to pull it out so that way you don't get the high shrill sounds of the Aeolian harp, because the most beautiful melodies they produce are those low, slow, melodious tones that come from a gentle breeze. Now, the sound box, what happens to it is hung on this bar. This is quarter sawn material, as I was explaining earlier, and you can see how the grain goes vertical. You just see these long, straight grains. This soundboard, again, because it's historical, I tried to make it as authentic as possible. This is quarter sawn Sitka spruce. Predominantly, they've always used spruce wood for the soundboards because it's very light, it's very resonant, and it is only strung on one side. The other side is a solid soundboard. So what happens is that the strings vibrate, it vibrates the top, and then you get a sympathetic vibration just like a drum on the back. Once again, it is crafted from riff-sawn cherry. It is all box jointed, just as the big box that contains the harp itself is all box jointed. You've enjoyed this segment on the first modern Aeolian harp by Athanasius Kircher, his automated harmonic device. I look forward to having you back. We are going to continue on with this series, and every week we are going to bring a new historical harp out to Lake Hudson, Michigan, to the Dark Sky Preserve, and we're going to set it up, and we're going to trust that the Greek gods come around to visit while we're describing the harps so you can actually hear them real time. And next week, when we come back, I am going to bring a harp that is from 1761. It was crafted by William Jones of Nayland. He was a Church of England bishop, and he wrote a 12-volume set of encyclopedias of the time called Physiological Disquisitions. And he wrote quite a large section on the Aeolian harp. And he had some really, really interesting ideas. I'm quite sure you'll be fascinated too on how the Aeolian harp works, because those people were fascinated by the idea that each string can produce so many different sounds, seemingly all at the same time. So I will bid you adieu for today, and welcome you back next week to watch the next segment, and where we will have William Jones harp from Physiological Disquisitions, 1761. We'll talk to you later, and you can always find out more information on my website, www.windharps.net. Have a good one.